Okay, we are live for the midday Mike and Mario show. Excited to be back. Looking forward to connecting and talking about recent developments since we last connected, Mario. But before we dive in further, how are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, I'm doing well. The weather here is very nice, sunny for this time of the year. And
Mhm.
yes, a lot going on in the world of geopolitics, finance, economics. I try to switch off as much as possible
Mhm.
about what's going on in Ukraine,
Yeah.
but I try to keep a bird's eye view of all the important things that I think we should focus on, which is
Right.
the money, the economy, and finances.
Right. I agree. I agree. So yeah, definitely me as well. I'm more focused on the macro picture. That's why a lot of visual aids coming from my side these days, trying to get people to really see the broader picture. Never, not focus on the things they want us to keep an eye on, which happen to be the smaller details. But couldn't help this past week with a lot of announcements out of the Eastern Hemisphere in response to the sanctions and how the sanctions have turned into a weapon against the world, but a benefit for those that were looking to get away from the petrodollar system. And so, before we dive further, for those that are tuned in, definitely hit the thumbs up, show your support for the channel, and then throw some questions in chats. We'll jump on that eventually. But I want to jump in right away and get your thoughts on this little visual aid right here, Mario. What comes to mind when you see Mr. Putin moving a gold chess piece on a chessboard?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. The first one is that the old saying that he or she who has the gold makes the rules.
Yeah.
And second one is that the Russians are renowned for being very good chess players.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Right.
so, and I know President Putin is also a black belt in
Mm-hmm.
judo.
Yeah.
So, guy's not silly. I mean, this is the kind of leader that we should have in the West. Not saying they should be, elected for life, but they should be intelligent, forceful. But unfortunately, we've got peon. The players in the West, they play checkers in the West. They don't
Right.
play chess.
Right.
That's what comes to mind for me.
Yeah. So this is like a little rendition from a piece of our artwork I did for a video I did a week ago or whatever. But just when I saw the gold news and the sanctions and the gold ban sanctions and all this stuff about gold, 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 I'm thinking like, man, like this is right where I think Russia, Putin, and all the other players out east where they want this narrative to go, bringing gold to the forefront to where it puts more information, more news on gold, and it plays right into as if Putin was moving more chess pieces, basically saying, check, your move. What's next? And so now we got all the sanctions and stuff coming. But so I just think it's just timely how gold is becoming a prominent story, and it's right on time. But let's keep moving along. Let's get into some more information here. So I want to piggyback on something that came out last week. This was a Western narrative saying Russia has 140 billion stockpile of gold, but no one wants to buy it. Oh, I don't think they want to sell it. They want to receive it for their natural resources. But once again, take it with a grain of salt. But gold is getting a lot of attention. Then you fast forward to this week, we got news about trying to freeze Russian gold. So clearly, the West is they're paying attention to the possibility of gold being used in the next monetary order. So I just man, it is just nonstop. So it's intensifying, I must admit. But what are your thoughts on all this, Mario?
Well, the first article you showed there showed
Mhm.
that the West and Yahoo News, whoever mainstream media in the West, they don't understand gold. And then you go to the other article.
Yeah.
Here they say no one wants it. So if no one wants it and it doesn't matter, why is the U.S. so adamant to try to stop people from dealing in gold?
Right.
What they're scared of is that gold is the anti-dollar.
Hmm.
People forget that the Federal Reserve note, or what we call a dollar, is a promise to pay in gold. And
Right.
the dollar we use today is just a substitute for gold and silver.
Right.
But yeah, they're scared, very scared about the gold button. I
Hmm.
mean, heard a couple of days ago the ruble
Hmm.
story about having to pay for gas in ruble, unfriendly European countries. I think
Right.
that was huge. I made a video about that yesterday,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think now the West is really scared about the gold, let's see, bullet, I would
Right.
say.
Right. That's good. So here's just, so we're gonna definitely get to that. But Russia wants the West to pay for oil and gas in rubles. And so I like the two words it was used. It said, what did it say? Unfriendly countries, or what was it? It was a word, two words it was used that stood out
Um,
because it's like literally they were trying to say they were referring to the EU, but then it's like they wanted to really say the US or West or Biden or something like that.
I think it's the
Compromise. Unfriendly. Here we go. Unfriendly countries.
yeah,
Unfriendly
it's the
countries.
the EU, UK, US, Canada,
Yeah.
Australia, New Zealand, I think Singapore, and Japan, and that's about it, really. And
Yeah.
Ukraine as well, of course.
Right. So here's a little that little short little minute video whenever it pops up of Putin making that announcement, basically saying like, it doesn't really make any sense for us to sell our resources, our oil, our energy in anything else other than rubles. So from starting next week, we're going to I'm gonna make some adjustments, and you're going to have to deal with us in our own currency. And of course, I saw the ruble at that moment. Definitely, it was very favorable on the foreign exchange market for the ruble.
Yeah.
But go ahead. Did you go say something?
No, no, I mean, the ruble did rebound. I'm just trying
Mhm.
to find out where it is right now, because I used to get it in my system, but it's not being traded. But it's trade. The dollar is about 100, but it got up as far as almost 140. So
Yeah.
yeah, the ruble has rallied back, and yeah, the other thing I would say about this natural gas thing,
Yeah.
to with rubles, is that the Russians are still going to respect the contracts they have, uh,
Hmm.
to to be paid in euros or dollars for now. But once they expire, I think it's going to be rubles,
Yeah.
and they could, apply that rule for all the other commodities like wheat and
Hmm.
and other things like titanium, all the metals and resources that they have.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I agree with this, but like Gonzalo Lira, some of you might have heard of him. He's become quite popular now because he's in the Ukraine. He thinks that this move could make the Russian ruble the major reserve currency for the world.
Mm.
I'm not too sure about that. I think it could be one of the major ones.
Yeah.
uh, I'm not sure it will become the major, and he
Right.
thinks the ruble could be backed by commodities other than gold. I'm not sure I agree with that, to have maybe a petro ruble, but it's all getting really interesting because China is looking to do the same.
Right. Right. Very true. And to just add to that, I think the West is also aware of the changing of the guards, and this has to do with what Jerome Powell admitted in the fact that it's possible for there to be more than one global reserve currency. And clearly, gold is starting to squeak into the headlines, and now it's going to be a matter of, of course, government's going to eventually try to back it or peg it to something to, so they don't have to actually move gold physically as much. But I think Jerome Powell is aware of what's going on, and therefore the scramble is on now to cover up the narrative by saying that you can actually freeze. Like, how can you freeze something that's not on a digital ledger, that's not publicly visible outside of just actually sending it or sharing it or making a phone call? You don't have to use a computer to actually transact solely in gold, and that's the benefit to having something real and tangible you can feel. So I do want to touch on something real quick that I read. And so moving forward, this is how they're going to, try to keep Russia from, allowing other nations to transact with them in gold. It says, what kind of impact will this have on Russia? And it says here, the move should further impact the country's ability to launder money. So they're basically saying that by using gold, they're laundering money, and it will apply secondary sanctions on people who trade in gold with Russia. So moving
Well,
gold now is considered laundering money.
well, I'll give my 2 cents
Go
on
ahead. Go
this.
ahead.
Well, I guess Russia has been clever enough to keep all its gold in Russia. They
Hmm.
didn't leave any gold at the New York Fed or the Bank of England. Second, I don't think the US and the West have enough power to control what India, Thailand,
Hmm.
or Pakistan, or China, or Brazil do.
Hmm.
How they decide to deal with Russia if they do it with gold. They're going to make it even worse. I think I said that a week or two ago, maybe with you.
Hmm.
If they sanction even more countries because they deal with Russia in gold,
Right.
they're going to accelerate the demise of the petrodollar, and people. It's going to convince sovereign countries even more that
Right.
the U.S. and the West that have gone crazy, and that they're shooting themselves in the foot.
Right.
So I think it's a desperate act, and it's not going to work.
Hmm.
And if they do try to implement it, it's going to backfire, just like everything is backfiring right now in the last month after all
Yeah.
these sanctions. Yes, Russia, their economy and their currency have been hit hard in the
Hmm.
short term, but in the long term, and I'm not a Russophile or anything like that, I'm just observing.
Right.
I think that Russia is a very wealthy country, has very little debt, a relatively well-educated populace, and they're going to do
Mhm.
really well.
Right. Here's a comment here from Shalom Dunn. It says Russians are not using gold to evade sanctions; they are using stable coins. And so don't really know, but once again, that's not to their benefit, because stable coins, if it's not issued by them or their own digital version of a coin, it's probably on the
Hmm.
Ethereum or whatever other blockchain is publicly visible, and they can see that and monitor that and track that, and they can use that against them and say
The
that they
other
can see what
uh,
countries are using that transactions with them. So
the other thing that happened about 3-4 years ago, the Russian central bank opened its own. Uh, how can I say? Opened an office. I think it
mhm,
was Shanghai or Beijing, one of those two cities.
yeah,
Probably Shanghai because that's the business center.
yeah,
So Russia doesn't have to move the gold to
yeah,
China, ship it. If they're going to pay for Chinese goods,
right,
they can just negotiate with the Chinese and say, "Well, we gonna credit you through our bank, Russian central bank in Shanghai with the gold."
yeah,
Or uh, we have the Shanghai Gold Exchange as well,
mhm,
where you trade gold for Chinese yuan. So I think the U.S. is going to have a really tough time
yeah,
implementing this. And some commentators have said, "Oh, it's too cumbersome to deal in gold because they're going to have to ship it." But I think the Russians and the Chinese trust each other, so
mhm,
they don't have to ship the gold.
right,
Yes, if you're going to deal in gold with the U.S., you'd have to be worried
yeah,
because
yeah,
the history, not American people, but the U.S. defaulted on its gold uh, liabilities back in
yeah,
'70. They still owe many countries billions of dollars of gold at $35 an ounce,
right.
technically.
Right, very good. And so, as you were mentioning about setting up a bank or establishing an account in Shanghai, I just typed in that real quick, and first thing popped up was because of the sanctions, Russian firms rushed to open Chinese bank accounts as sanctions bite. So, I had imagined, of course, sanctions only strengthen their cooperation and all their deals. So, these are activities you really can't stop. So, if Russian banks, private, commercial, whatever, actually go to another geographical location right beneath them and they start doing business, back and forth, that's not on your network, so you're not really part of that trade there. So, but it is what it is. But we're going to hear more and more about what they can and can't do, and so other nations will jump on. So here it looks like the guy in your neck of the woods, UK Johnson, says there's evidence out there. I'm not sure how their intelligence came up with this, but Russia's trying to get around sanctions using gold. So
Yeah, it's
how's
probably
Mr. Johnson received over there these days?
probably the same evidence they use for the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. That's how good that intelligence is.
Yeah,
He's just talking out of his, I don't want to say the word.
right.
The sun, where the sun doesn't shine, he's talking out of that end of his body.
Yeah, this guy is something else. So he's and here's just more evidence as to the narrative they're trying to paint. So the article I was referring to earlier talked about 2014 is the when the whole Crimea situation jumped off, and they're using that as saying that's when Russia really started to get into the gold mix, which will put us about right here. But as we can see, well before then, they were already heading towards something real and tangible
Yeah.
outside of the petro system, waiting for that ideal moment, which might be coming real soon. Or so. But anyways, it's interesting to hear how they try to paint these narratives and try to tell us a
Maybe
story.
maybe I think they started buying a lot. They accelerated there just around 2006, and
Hmm.
maybe it accelerated again just after 2014 and what happened in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Uh, it's just given them the incentive to do so. But they're not the only central banks. One of the central banks who's been buying gold. I think the Chinese have
Hmm.
probably bought a lot more than they let us know. We've
Oh,
seen India, Turkey, Brazil, and many others. Poland has bought gold. Even
yeah.
Ireland, I think, bought some gold recently.
Yeah. One thing that's different about, even just using the words buying some gold, they're ultimately, I think Russia and China, have been heavily in mining gold. Like, we don't know what happens within those borders there. We just know what they report to the World Gold Council, which of course is a fraction of what, their actual holdings might be. So we have no clue, but it's just interesting how they try to sell that. But, they're buying gold. They're really redeeming notes, their own
Yeah,
central
that's
bank
right.
liabilities.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep moving. So here's another thing worth mentioning. Just more distractions from the West. Earlier or 2 weeks ago, the Stop Russian Gold Act of 2022 was put forth by a Republican out of Texas. And it's real short and sweet, basically saying if you do business with Russia and gold, we're coming after you type of thing. And so it just shows how gold is of importance to, make sure you keep out of the limelight and away from the ears and eyes and ears of individuals, because it's going to come that way. And let's keep moving, man. What else we got here? So I want to talk about. You can touch on this if you don't mind, Mario.
Yeah,
Just more gold news.
yeah, gold producer Petropavlovsk. A bit of a mouthful, but I'm interested in this because this company used to be called Peter Hambro Mining, and it's a UK-based company. Their headquarters is in Russia, and they mine in eastern Siberia, I think. They mine
Mm-hmm.
for gold. And a couple of weeks ago, I remember this company, and I thought, oh, I wonder how it's doing. And I tried to buy some through
Yeah.
my brokerage, and it wouldn't allow me to buy unless I was closing a short, and
Mm-hmm.
it wouldn't allow you to sell unless you already have a position. So they're
Yeah.
not allowing you to buy this company. This company has gone down the tubes,
Yeah.
the market cap, and the thing is, it's a UK domestic company, but it operates a lot in Russia. The directors are Russian. Their bank is, I think, Gazprom Bank.
Uh-huh.
And now they're supposed to make a coupon payment for one of their bonds, but
Yeah.
the that they use has been shut out from the West,
Right.
or yeah, from the West, and it's possible that this company could go bust, but they still have the assets in Russia,
Right.
the gold mines, and there's a special kind of gold mine. If you go to the bottom of the article,
Uh-huh.
they have some here. It says Petropavlovsk's most valuable asset is a state-of-the-art pressure oxidation plant, one of just two in Russia, commissioned late 2018. The so-called POX hub allows it to produce gold from refractory ore, which is difficult to process but abundant in Russia. So maybe this is
Mm.
the West again trying to stop Russia from accumulating gold, and this company could be producing a lot of gold that stays in Russia.
Yeah.
But the article also said that the Russian central bank might come in and save them and buy their gold and
Yeah.
keep going. And I think they will do that.
Mm.
And I really wanted to buy the company because
Yeah.
it's dropped from 30 pence or to it's now less than 2p.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good investment. But unfortunately, I think it's going to be delisted from the London Stock Exchange, and people won't be able to access it in the West.
Yeah.
All it means is that Russia is going to control those assets even more, and more gold for them.
Yeah. Oh man. So yeah, that's more gold gold is the primary focal point in the monetary realm. But let's talk about what's happening with the London Metals Exchange, and how that rigging looks like something is blowing, or if they've tripped a couple fuses and now they're trying to scramble to cover some things up. But here's that tweet you sent me from Wall Street Silver. About LME says second ring session on March 24th, and nickel will be deemed a disrupted session, and all agreed trades during this session will be null and void.
Well, they did that a couple of weeks ago. They
Yeah.
canceled trades, which is something I worked in the markets for over 20 years. And the only time I cancel a trade for a client, for example, is if the client said, oh, I want to buy such thing and I sold by mistake. And then I would try to buy it back at the same price and say, okay, we've canceled the trade. But
Yeah.
this is different. This is like people agreeing, two counterparties agreeing on buying and selling. And then days later or 24 hours later, the exchange says, oh, those trades are no good. So I think the LME now is hashtag Mickey Mouse market. That's what it is. And we were talking before we started that I think this is, and you said that as well, that this is a symptom of all the leverage, all the paper in these markets that are supposed to be trading real things, and it's all unraveling.
Right. It's unraveling. And so I went to the LME website just to get some updates. And of course, you got to download some reports, but just day after day, prohibition of order submission outside daily, whatever, disruption event. So it's like definitely they're having issues. And so as a result of that, they're preparing themselves, trying to brace for more impact by doubling up their default fund, by having those that are having the speculators involved with all this shenanigans, basically add more money to the pool to help cover some of the losses for upcoming April possible defaults, if there are any on margin calls. So,
and the way the LME works, it's not a normal futures market where brokers match buyers and sellers and take a little commission, a fixed commission. The LME has brokers that make markets, so their clients call, they make them, let's say I don't know if JP Morgan is on the LME, but the brokers will take a position actually instead of matching trades between their clients. And I think it wasn't just the Chinese billionaire who lost a lot, but it was brokers in the LME, and it was going to bring down the whole exchange because these brokers, they don't trade only in nickel, but in all the other metals. It would have affected all counterparties.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't trade on the LME anymore, and not that I do.
Right. And that's the thing, like, so many people involved. Those are all the big players. They're operating in the billions. And so I saw something about that one Chinese company. They stood to lose $8 billion or something like that. And I saw I think yesterday, another big player decided to, he's able to cover some of his losses or whatever. So it's like they're playing with other people's currency, unfortunately. But yet they're going to be bailed out by banks and governments eventually, pretty soon, if they want to keep this stuff going, or they'll pull the plug and let it rip, and therefore everything will be released.
I heard a story a few days ago or yesterday that energy traders now in Europe are asking governments and central banks to bail them out. I mean, this is ridiculous. The one thing about the LME, someone should ask Nigel Farage to come and give his opinion, because I used to work with a guy who traded for his clients on the LME, and his broker on the LME was actually Nigel Farage. So Nigel Farage knows a lot about the LME, but I haven't heard him say anything because he's probably got a lot of old friends that were probably their skins were saved, with these cancellations of trade. So just speculation, but I don't think he's been in that market for many decades.
Right. Now, speaking of which, just some things we can some possible scenarios that could play out, and things we could learn if some switches and if some fuses blow and things, they lose control. So just looking at this visual aid here, or this little graph here, showing over the last couple of years how they're able to, just profit off these small little blips here and there, that whatever. But then something broke and it took it to all-time highs. And this is old, of course, but imagine at this current moment, we're in if you look at the far right, 3,000, 4,000 dollar range, per tonnage. Then all of a sudden it shoots up, to where I saw something about 34,000 or something. 34,000 is the last time I saw, or 34,000 a ton. This is in what is this, over in Shanghai, and 36,000 as of today, if I'm not mistaken, fluctuating a little bit here and there. But could you imagine that in gold prices? Like if something broke, it went from $2,000 gold to next thing you know, it's out there $36,000 an ounce type of thing. Would that be a very joyful occasion for a lot of people who've been very patiently waiting?
Well, and silver as well. I mean,
Yeah.
I think silver and gold have been a lot more, well, if you want to call it manipulated or leveraged, hypothecated
Hmm.
than the base metals. So
Yeah.
it could be even more explosive. And
Yeah.
basically, it could mean the end of COMEX. The futures, they probably
Right.
have to stop trading uh, gold and silver contracts, and even the over-the-counter market in London,
Hmm.
which is supposed to be for physical,
Yeah.
but it's mainly just unallocated paper games like in the LME.
Yeah. And then just to show you a little bit of a visual aid, if I can, where did it go? I wanted to make sure I bring this to your attention here. This is something that gives us a viewpoint of some large numbers, but this is 2001, and if every or 40% a gold price necessary to back 40% of M2 back in 2001. And so since then they've added a couple trillion to this, I'm sure, but we're seeing about $30,000, an ounce needed for 40% gold coverage, and that's on a very moderate level, to say the
Yeah,
least. But well, go
that
ahead.
that that's realistic because up until I think 1968, by law, U.S. M2 had to have 40% backing in gold. And I
Yeah,
think it was President Johnson who scrapped that. So I know Nixon closed the gold window in 71, but you could argue that it was in 1968 really that the US went off a gold backing.
yeah,
So yeah, as you can see, it would be at 30,000, and that number is moving higher and higher because M2 is continuing to go higher.
correct, correct.
It's accelerated.
Yeah, and speaking of which, I actually saw yesterday. I was trying to verify that today, but somebody, tweeted, quick little synopsis, a snippet of saying that the Federal Reserve balance sheet reaches another all-time high.
Yeah,
And
I know it's still going up, not that much, but it hasn't stopped growing.
right,
I think it went up like 38 or I don't know, a few billion in the last week and about 38 billion in the last month. I thought they're supposed to stop.
right. So something there is so something's not
Yeah,
going
I
according to
wanted to
play.
share, I wanted to share a meme that's quite, let's see, where is it?
Also, for those tuning in, definitely hit the thumbs up, show your support for the channel, and
Uh-huh.
throw some questions and thoughts out there. We'll get to them pretty soon. You can share it on
Let me,
your side, or let me know, or send it to me. I can share it.
yeah, it's a tweet actually, but I'll send it to you, see if you can open it.
Okay. And then also, I want to. We got a couple more stories I want to definitely hit on, and then we'll take some questions and thoughts.
Yeah, hold on. Private chat. See if you can open that. I thought this was quite good. It gives you a great idea of what the Fed's really doing.
All right, give me 1 second. Copy, paste this. All right, here it comes. Let me just put it up here. Do. Open this window up here. Here we go.
Fed fight.
Yeah, I saw this.
Yeah.
The Fed fighting inflation. Yeah, 25 basis points. And speaking of which, so watch this. So I was actually checking that out. Where was I? I was looking more into that. Let me go here. So definitely want to touch on the treasury yields, but before we get into that, let's go to the very bottom. And it talks about current Fed funds rate. And so as of right now, the current Fed funds rate is 0.32. And so once again, that's not significant whatsoever. So that quarter that was added, I'm assuming it's included in this, doesn't
Yeah.
really begin to address anything whatsoever. That's not really a fight, in my opinion, but I could be wrong.
Prior to this, it was 0 to a quarter. They have a target,
Yeah.
and now the target is 25 to 50. So 32 is right, kind of in the middle there.
Yeah.
So it's still very low. I mean,
Well
with the
beneath. It's nowhere nowhere needed to be able to really fight inflation if that was the objective, but we know that's not. So since I'm on this page, just touch on the concerns is growing because I'm hearing more and more people talk about recessions, the invert, yield curve is getting tighter, whatever.
yeah, and today, I mean, again, out of the blue here, yields have jumped up a lot. The 2-year note is up 20 basis points. It's at 2.32%. The 10 years touched 250 today. It's now at 248. That's up 14 basis points. Uh, I think when the 2-year yield is higher than the 10-year,
Mhm.
then say the yield curve is inverted.
Yeah.
But right now as well, if you compare 3, 5, and 7 year yields to the
Mhm.
10, they're all inverted. It's all inverted. So yeah, only a matter of time until the 2-year goes above the 10, and
Yeah.
that will signal a recession. And why? Well, because uh, banks usually borrow short term,
Yeah.
like, and let's say they used to be able to borrow for zero from the Fed and lend, let's say, at 1.5%, 10-year, and make the difference.
Mhm.
But if they have to borrow short term higher than the long term, their profitability is going to go down. They're going to lend less money to the public, and the economy will slow down because it's a credit driven economy.
Yeah. Now, so we see that the people watching this, they can see this. So clearly, the central controllers or regulators, they got to see this coming. So assumption will be at some point they're gonna have to backtrack. But will they allow things to continue to unravel and then look for another diversion tactic to say that this is why, and
Yeah,
so they
well,
and not reverse course?
the last time the yield curve was inverted was in 2019, and
Mhm.
everyone kept saying, "Oh, this time it's different."
Yeah.
And then you had COVID, and that
Yes.
was the excuse.
Right.
So I'm sure a lot of the people in the mainstream are going to say the same thing. Oh, it's different this time and stuff,
Yeah.
and something will happen. And then
Say, can we say cyber event, or an actual hot war starts, or Russia decides to announce gold is the next yada yada yada. So we'll see. But let's get to some questions since we got it. Get to this one here, Chris. Appreciate you, man. It says, if U.S. does go back to the gold standard, what is the best type to go to? Is anything less than the best a waste of time? Then thanks. Is anything less than the best a waste of time? The best. My first thought is, having just 3.9, fine 4.9, whatever you can get a hold of. Gold is gold in this in the monetary changing of order. So on an international level, they go on tonnage. So for us, just having anything outside of burning papers and digits on screens would do you justice. But I don't know. What do you think, Mar?
well, I mean, uh, the prices that we have today, the fiat prices, are way out
Hmm.
of whack. Of course, you can't go if you go back to a $20 gold piece, which is
Hmm.
just under an ounce of gold. Um, but maybe they will go back to actually constitutional gold, and
Hmm.
maybe there'll have to be a rearranging or a lopping off of zeros. Let's
Yeah.
say gold goes to $20,000 an ounce,
Hmm.
and then they take 3 zeros off it, and they go back to $20. The old pre 1933 coins. Yeah, and yes, Chris, I think if you're going to have an honest money system, it can't be a bit honest. It has to be. That's what the states is. They don't like gold standard or a lot of the bankers because they can't cheat.
Yeah.
So yeah, it wouldn't work if we didn't do it properly, and but it would be really painful to do it properly. I think a lot of people who think they have a lot of money would find out that they don't have that much.
Right, right. Yeah, the truth will definitely set you
See,
free
that's
financially and everything else.
that's the $20, pre 1934 or
Hmm.
33, and
Yeah.
that's about 0.9675 of an ounce.
Mhm.
So I guess if they let gold go to 20,000 and they say we're going to lop off, let's say, 3 zeros, we're going to go back, to that kind of. I think the measurement was $20.67 was a troy ounce,
Yeah.
and
So
then
here's a
and Roosevelt changed it to 35 in 1934.
yeah. So yeah. Yeah. Weight definitely outweighs paper and digits in this next era.
But
And also, Mark, go ahead. Go ahead.
the other thing I would add, excuse me, sorry,
No problem.
is that you need to think of gold not in the fiat price, but
Mhm.
in purchasing power. What an ounce will buy you, or a gram?
Yeah. Yeah. And so Mario, just on my side, I updated the changing of the monetary order. And you see predominantly debased slash burned fiat note there, about 80-90% through, which more resembles the currently remaining purchasing power of the Federal Reserve note. So had to update that a little bit.
That's good.
Oh man. All right, let's keep it going. So let's get to some questions. So feel free to throw out some questions at Rethinking a Dollar. It'll stand out. We'll jump on it. Or Mario, as you scroll through, what do you see? We can
Yeah.
just get some thoughts answered. Here's one that says, guys, if you had $100,000, what would you do with it? Yeah, depends on where you're at in life in general. So if you just actually have found a bag of notes outside $100,000 worth, you might want to, if you keep it, whatever you do with it, take care of some of your old liabilities and free yourself up so you got some more time to do what you love to do. Then, finds a way to, double that, triple that, flip that, whatever. So
Yeah,
just
I
have
agree with
fun with
Mike. Yeah, I don't have to. I
it.
agree with him.
Is that go by? It says, what good is money when there's not? Okay, so that's good. Where is that? What good is money when there's nothing to buy?
That's
Ah,
true. That's what happens in the high. Actually, in the hyperinflation, you got both. There's
mhm,
no currency, or the currency is worthless, and there's nothing to buy. They're talking here in the UK already of shortages of milk,
mhm,
because the farmers are saying that it's getting too expensive to produce the milk. The feed for the cows is going up, the fertilizers,
yeah,
transporting the milk, petrol and fuel prices are going up. So
yeah,
yeah, in a hyperinflation, I've spoken to a guy from Lebanon. They've had hyperinflation in the last few years. I've spoken to Star Path Academy.
mhm,
Yeah, they said that there's no currency around, and if there is, it's worthless. So producers don't produce anything. It's not a good time.
yeah,
Hyperinflation, uh, and yeah, you might have gold and silver, and you might not be able to do much with it. The trick is holding on to it after things settle down, because hyperinflation doesn't last forever, and you have great opportunities, I think.
right, very true. And it doesn't help that yesterday the current pretender and thief, admitted to sanctions actually causing food shortages globally, and especially here in the U.S. as well as everywhere else pretty soon. So it's amazing how people don't connect the fact that sanctions don't really hurt Russia when they have all the things the world needs, and hurts everyone else who are dependent upon what Russia offers the world. So it's like, but yeah, I'll
Yeah,
keep going with
I
it.
heard someone say that these sanctions, the way they're going to hurt Russia is that wealthy Russians won't be able to buy Louis Vuitton handbags or Porsches, and in the West, we won't be able to buy food.
Yeah, very true. So here's another thought. Here says from Witcher Work says, according to the U.S. law, no debts can be paid in full with anything other than dollars. So gold is tied to the dollars here by law.
Well, but the dollar was supposed to be a weight of gold and silver.
Yeah,
You see, that's legal tender law, which I think is a bad law.
right. And pretty soon we're going to see some announcements about them having to adjust the legal tender laws by adding in digital assets CBDCs into the mix as well. So they're going to expand that further.
ISB Inc. has a question I'll try to answer here. What's your ideal monetary system? Gold, silver, how do you store it and make it practical for day-to-day trade? Well, the ideal monetary system is a free market system. And
Mhm.
we had that up until prior to World War One, or prior to 1933 in the US.
Yeah.
And the way you trade, it's just like coinage. You take your silver coin and you buy something and people are used it, or gold. Gold
Mhm.
is more of a savings instrument, I would say.
Yeah.
I guess if you go out for a huge dinner at a expensive restaurant, you might use a $10 gold piece.
Yeah.
But for day-to-day change, it's silver and even copper. So you just, and the US Mint, it's all in the Constitution. The US Mint is supposed to take anyone's gold and silver, be it bullion or jewelry, and they will convert it into coins,
Yeah.
US coins. They'll mint it for you for, they'll take a little percentage off it. It's called seniorage, so that they can keep running. And that's how it runs.
Yeah.
So
Good point. And so as you mentioned, just having a free market to allow the market to determine what's best and what the people want to use. So I wouldn't be opposed to the digital asset space if it was something that I had more confidence in, i.e., I'm more hard pressed to would utilize privacy coins, because those coins are created with the idea of trying to make sure that there's complete fungibility, complete privacy. So I'll be good with using those if more people started to adopt that. So
one
I'm
thing
okay. I'm fair game.
one thing I like to see, I wouldn't mind using digital anything, but
Hmm.
I'd like to see a few things happen. The central bank being abolished,
Hmm.
um, you know, the banks having no power to like give our information away,
Yeah.
and also to scrap the inland revenue. So you've got that, it would be really free. And people say, well, what about money laundering, criminals? Well, that's the job for the police to catch
Right.
criminals.
Right.
And if they have money and they're out and about free, that shouldn't really be our job or a bank's job to police them. Do your job, a law enforcement, and
Right.
don't blame us or try to tell us we're money launderers because you don't feel like doing your job.
Right, and then the very concept of money laundering has become, it has become prevalent because of the taxation schemes in and of itself. The fact that only reason that they labeled as bad actors or whatever is because the government wants their cut. If we remove all that stuff that hinders our freedom and ability to earn and work and save without having to give it back in the form of taxation, which in of itself is a part of the debt-based system. Mind you, Federal Reserve Act came first, then the income tax added on top of that. You get rid of those two entities. What's money laundering? You get to keep and earn and save what you actually produce. So yeah.
Another question here, Wally Brooks. How do you eliminate the Fed and banks and extend credit? Well, I'm not talking about eliminating the banks. I'm talking about eliminating the central bank.
Hmm.
And how do you extend credit? Well, how it used to be extended in the past before there
Hmm.
was a central bank. Let's say I deposit some gold with a bank,
Hmm.
and I wanted a demand deposit, which means that I can go there anytime and get my gold. But
Yeah.
if I deposit it as a time deposit, they would be they would have, let's say, a 3-month time deposit at 4%. They would pay me 4% and they would lend that out to someone else at 6.
Yeah.
That's how credit would be extended. And they'd have to be very careful that the credit that they extended was good credit so they could pay me back in 3 months. That's
Hmm.
how it would work. But you don't need a central bank for that. And I'm not against banks as long as they're honest,
Hmm.
honest banks.
Right.
Like a deposit is a demand deposit. The money should be there anytime I go there. It's when the bankers abuse that and
Right.
they do a fractional reserve with
Right.
your demand deposits. That's the problem.
Correct. And so, like, prior to the fractional reserve banking model, after the Federal Reserve Act, was put into law, you needed actual capital. You needed, stuff in vaults to be able to use as collateral to be able to
Yeah,
extend those things.
and there was even before the Fed, some banks practice fractional reserve.
Yeah. They didn't last
Uh,
too long.
they could get in trouble, and no one would bail them out. So,
Right.
and I think
So,
that's better than having a central bank, though, because people become more aware of what a bank is, and consumers are more careful.
yeah. Here's a question from Mr. Wally Brooks. It says, if the Fed is gone, wouldn't we need a central bank?
No. Why? The US didn't have a central bank from 1837 to 1914 or 1913. Why would you need a central bank? Why would we
That's
need a central bakery or a central dairy? We
right.
don't.
Right. That's the responsibility of the U.S. Treasury initially before they abdicated, responsibility to a private entity. So the U.S. Treasury was supposed to be the ones that oversee uncles or our government's financial matters, and of course, in collaboration with the United States Mint, which was supposed to be our coinage creator. You take those two entities; those are government institutions that are still operational now, but now they answer to, or they've been hijacked by the Federal
Private
Reserve Bank itself. Exactly.
owned by private banks.
So this is the other thing. Like our U.S. Treasury right now, the person who sits at the top of it happens to be a former chairwoman who also has connections to I think Goldman Sachs, if I'm not mistaken, or one of the two big to fail banks. So they just rotate people in and out. They clear clowning. Anyway, keep it moving. What else we got out there? A couple more thoughts, questions. Let me see. Anything else stick out to you, Mario? Highlight out rethinking the dollar sort of stand out, and I can try to grab it.
Question there. Richard Rothschild had a patent on COVID. Uh, I've seen that. I saw that like a year ago or so.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
got nothing to do with the Rothschild family. So this is rubbish. This
Mm-hmm.
Richard Rothschild is a guy who changed his name.
Oh, really?
So not that I'm I'm just trying to give you the facts.
Oh man, here's something that's comical from Roth. It says, "What is a woman?" So I'm assuming. Did you see this the hearing for the Supreme Court nominee when she was
Well,
asked what a woman was? She was like, "I'm not a
I,
biologist. I
as
don't."
I
I'm
told
like,
you, I'm trying to switch off from all this circus.
okay, that's good.
I heard there's someone that is being trying to get confirmed for the Supreme Court. I
Yeah.
guess that's. I think that's a symptom of a fall, an empire that's crumbling. Because I
Ah,
think when what was that empire? The Eastern Roman Empire or the Byzantium Empire when
yeah,
it collapsed in the 1470s or something, when the
yeah.
Ottomans invaded Constantinople. They had things like that as well. They had arguments about, oh, should this saint be feminine or masculine? So it's a symptom of end of empire, if
A
anything.
moralless, godless society. We're living in. I've never been around beyond this, past 40 some years, but we're living in dark times, and they're getting darker by the moment, intentionally at that. So, yeah. But this is something that concerned me earlier this week that I want to mention. When I think at the beginning of this week, Justice Clarence Thomas, was pronounced with having the flu, went into the hospital. I'm like, dang. I'm like, man, if he don't make it through, that'll be two Supreme Courts in 1 year under one president at the same time. They're trying to take us off the cliff. I'm like, this is not good. But according to this, he's got discharged, so hopefully he's in good health, because the last thing we need is outright, because they wanted to what's it called, repack the court, or reshape the court, or pack the court, or whatever.
This new Supreme Court justice they're trying to confirm, she replacing Clarence Thomas, is she?
No, yeah. So whoever the last gentleman, so somebody just 2 weeks ago, a month ago, I forgot the other Supreme Court, he stepped down. So
Okay.
she's coming in his place. So whoever that guy was, I forgot his name. But
Yeah.
if this other seat became available, then that'd be two people within 1 year. And I
Maybe
don't know
they're
the last time that's happened.
putting something in Clarence Thomas' tea.
Or something like that. That's what I'm assuming. But anyway, we about 48 minutes or so, Mario. Let's get ready to dial back, man, because we can go forever. But as always, I appreciate everybody hanging out with us, being a blessing to us channel. Manacle64, definitely. If you guys don't know, go check them out. Do great work daily. And rethinking it out, I'm everywhere, so I try to be. But Mario, sign us off, man. Give us some good news for the weekend.
Good news. I'm playing golf on Sunday. The weather is nice. Switch off from the circus. Focus on your family, on yourself, your friends, and also try not to get angry at all the craziness.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is a good thing as well, I would say. Even
Yeah.
even again, for people who you might think might not deserve it.
Right. Good point. And so I was actually, and Mario, I've been on this, diving deep down the spiritual, not rabbit hole, but just trying to get into truth. And I was studying earlier and I came across something I just want to bring to everybody's attention if I can find it real quick. Because it touched my soul right when I read it. But I'm gonna read it from Psalms 19, and it just jumped out on me. And it's King David's penmanship here. It says, "The law out of thy mouth is better unto me than thousands of gold and silver." And the NIV says thousands of pieces of gold and silver. But it just, I talk a lot about monetary stuff, but yet ultimately, King David here, one of the wealthiest of other than his son, but he had chambers and chambers and chambers and vaults of gold and silver. But he was just emphasizing that the law from your mouth, referring to God, is more precious to me than thousands of pieces of silver and gold. And I was like, man, that's just, I would love to get to that point where I could just be so in love with the word to where everything else is rubbish.
I mean, the other day I was playing golf, and it was really nice after a long winter, playing with friends, and that's what it's all about, enjoying life as well. And yeah, gold and silver are important, but it's not everything.
Right.
Yeah, this is what we cover, but doesn't mean to say it's everything. It helps.
Right. It has its purpose, but it shouldn't be the primary focal point. But anyway, everybody, appreciate you for blessings with your time and presence. Have a great weekend. Be blessed, be safe, and we'll be back at it next week because it's going to be a hot week next week, I'm sure. So see you guys later. Peace.
Bye.